Tim Miller and his famous
And
wallpaper.
we are live.
All right.
It is Tuesday, June 30th, 2020, 5 o'clock p.m. I am here in the Bamboo studio. Tim Miller is got his jungle theme action going. Kate is in a new room where we've never seen her before. She assures me it's an art studio. And Kate, you have the monologue today, so take it away.
Okay, so as we were kind of getting ready to set this up, and I knew that Tim was coming on, which I was very excited about. Hi, Tim.
Okay.
I was, and you said they were going to talk about Parler. I was like, well, wait a second. And I did my normal thing where I freak out about pronouncing words. And I realized, oh my God, I don't know that I've ever heard it actually pronounced. Is it parlay? Like the thing the pirates do? Like when they want to treat us or have some type of understand, like the French parlay, like to speak? Or is it like parlor, like parlor games, or the thing that you keep tidy and picked up for guests? And I realized that I actually had no idea that I have seen it spelled and never heard it pronounced. And so
maybe it's never been pronounced.
I know. And
it's
so then
only
and so then I thought that it would make a good poll then to see, like, but then I thought that there were two really interesting things that were implied by either pronunciation: pirates or like your grandmother's front room. And like what should a content moderation policy be of a website? Should it be a website for pirates, or should it be a website for your grandmother? And so I'm just curious as to how we think that the pronunciation, I don't know, what is the actual pronunciation, Tim?
I don't know why I'm considered an expert on this. As I wrote in the Bulwark, I spent 8 minutes on Parler, and I saw all I needed to see. I'm pretty certain it's Parler. I think it is too. I do not think that it has any sort of French lineage, nor do I think that they were thinking about pirates on guard. But I do like that mental image, and I think it's probably more of like, rather than your grandmother's parlor, like your racist great uncle's parlor.
Right.
Does your racist great uncle have a parlor, or does he just have an armchair that he sits there and watches Fox News?
I think he calls the armchair his parlor. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like an upside down whiskey box or something.
So tell us about Parler, Tim.
I hear with a banana daiquiri today, by the way, because I was unprepared last time.
I've got whiskey, man.
Right.
So tell us about Parler. You spent 8 minutes on Parler, which is 8 more than I suspect most of us have spent. And your article about it, which was, I want to say, hilarious, reads like, I mean, if I didn't know it was all true, I would think it was like a juvenile satire of like what I found, like a lefty's juvenile satire of what I found on Parler. How bad is it?
Isn't our whole existence right now basically a lefty's juvenile satire of what the Republicans were supposed to be? Isn't that the presidency too, and Parler and most of the Congress? It is. It looked to me, just from a user interface standpoint, it's a little bit unclear to me what's different from it than like a message board. It looked kind of, I think it's like a fancy name, for a message board. But when you sign on, they suggest the big accounts to you. Like when you sign on for Twitter, they suggest this sort of cross section of people. There's some celebrity. You get Ashton Kutcher maybe, and Rachel Maddow, and Hannity. They just suggest you a bunch of different people. On Parler, the initial suggestions were Eric Trump, Dinesh D'Souza, and Dan Bongino. So you get a pretty good sense for what you're getting into right up.
Oh, he likes me.
Oh, really?
Dan Bongino,
my God, he is obsessed with Ben.
Yeah, he spends a lot of time thinking about me, tweeting about he he went on a campaign for a while about how I should change my name to spare my family the embarrassment of being associated with me, which I was touched by. I really thought that reflected, caring and thought,
Imagine what it's like to be the
kindness.
down market Seb Gorka, though. And I mean that does create a lot of internal angst to know that you're the down market Seb Gorka. So, and I think Seb was probably on Parler. So anyway, you get
How
on
many,
there.
what's the user? I mean, honestly, I can't even keep up with these things, but what's the user rate at Parler? I don't even think it's that high. It's like Gab. It's not even as high as Gab, right?
It wasn't initially. It did have the most downloads of any app on the App Store like one day this week. So what does that actually mean in numbers? I don't know, but I in 5 figures, I think, at least. And a number of senators are on there. And the initial I'm not sure that the CEO of Parler expected it to be a troll site for Republicans, and I think that he wanted a broad swath, and like the Krasensteins, remember them? He invited them on there, and it sounded like he was begging liberals to get on there with them, but they did a bad job with the rollout of that, and so the site just became ridiculous. And so in my 8 minutes on there, I rejected all of their recommended follows, and then just went into the search bar and Googled a few words that I don't really feel comfortable saying on In Lieu of Show, but Groyper is one, I'm happy to say. Are you familiar with the Groypers?
No.
The Groypers are a subgroup of the alt-right that practice Nazism via irony. They're ironic Nazis. They're unfamiliar with the rule of goats, but
right.
Yeah, they practice ironic Nazism, and they troll people like Charlie Kirk, and say that he's in the pocket of Israel and things like this in order to sort of cleave off the even further section of the alt-right. So I searched for.
I'm signing up for it right now.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So now we're gonna get to see this in real life.
And a lot's probably
I used
happened
your
in a week.
email then.
Oh, thank you, Kate.
A lot has probably happened in the week. So I searched for Groyper. I searched for a couple of racist terms, and there was a lot to find there. On both of the racist terms, I did search the N-word, and on the available usernames, very many usernames had already they had already taken on the N-word as the username.
Yeah, I like
they wanted
that part
for their personal brand.
I like that part of your article where you pointed out how many of those names were already taken, and sort of like you've missed your chance.
Yeah, bad news. If you want to have the N-word in your handle, a lot of the best options are already gone.
It's kind of it's like Christopher
literally,
Columbus, except even
the
more
first
racist.
thing I saw, and we'll see. I'm interested what the first thing you see is, Kate. Literally, the first thing I saw when I turned it on was this meme. I don't even want to laugh. It's just despicable. It was the first thing under Groyper. It was a black soccer player kneeling in front of a white soccer player with the comment something like, "Don't you remember the good old days?" or something like this.
Ben, can you enable my screen sharing? The first thing that I just verified it. It's bright, and it says personalize your experience. Parleys from these sources, parlays. It is like parlay.
Really?
I mean, it must be, because they say parlays, like tweets, like instead of like Twitter, like tweets, like parlays with PARLEYS. From these sources will be appear in your feed. Oh, that's excellent English.
Will be appear.
That's what it says.
Of course, Twitter's bad too. They say who to follow.
Okay.
I
will be appear is worse.
Yeah, I mean, but it's clearly unintentional. But Jack, if you're watching, who and whom, not the same part of speech. Kate, share your screen so we can see what you're going through here. We can share your pain.
Okay. I wouldn't do it without you guys. So parlays from these sources will be appear in your feed.
I want to say parleys. I like
parleys.
Yeah.
Maybe. Breitbart, we have a wide range here. Breitbart, Daily Caller, Parler,
Epic
Parler,
Times.
and the Epic
Yeah.
Times.
Are you familiar with the Epic Times?
No.
Oh,
What is
yes.
it? No, I'm not.
Ben, please
There-
go ahead.
Well, the Epic Times is a Falun Gong publication that I think started out as mostly a Falun Gong, anti-Chinese Communist Party thing, but for reasons that have never become clear to me, became obsessed with the coup attempt against Donald Trump, and they have kind of gone all Trumpy for reasons that I'm not sure what that has to do with either being against the Chinese Communist Party or for Tai Chi type mass exercises. So they're kind of part of the far right media ecosystem in a China inflected sort of way. Is that fair, Tim?
That's right, and I'm intrigued. It's like on my list of things I want to research because I'm very interested actually in why they have gone so Trumpy. There must be something there. Their ads, they're spending. I mean, I guess the Falun Gong has money, but they spend millions of dollars promoting these like anti-deep state ads now across YouTube,
Yeah,
Facebook.
they're very upset with
Deep state.
The deep state folks.
Wow. This is
Laura Loomer made it on there.
Laura
yeah.
Loomer.
But you see that Dan is my first person.
Recommended.
They must know that.
They must know we're connected.
Yes.
Rudy
Laura
G.
Loomer. We've got Rudy,
He'll be
Ted,
butt parleying.
Devin Nunes. Oh wow. This is
Devin Nunes is there. Good.
Yeah.
It's a nice
CPAC.
Oh, the racist Katie Hopkins. That's a good
Dan
suggested
Scavino.
follow.
so
This is incredible.
Tell us
Anyway.
Congrats to the Examiner opinion page, by the way, of being listed next to these luminaries.
And then I get my profile color. I wonder what they call these. There's no, yeah. Anyway.
So you're today this other interesting story broke about Parler, I guess we should call it.
I'm really going to keep calling it that just to troll them. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think we should, in the spirit of Target, we should. But this other story broke that for all their talk about free speech, they are actually banning accounts. What do we know about this?
Yeah, so the CEO, let me see if I can pull this up. This is one of those things that the free speech absolutists, the Josh Hawleys and the Ted Cruzes of the world, seem to ignore every time they claim that there's a deep constitutional crisis anytime a racist gets suspended from Twitter, is that unfettered anonymous speech does not a community make. You can go ahead and ask old Craig at Craigslist how that worked out for him. Ask the comment section of any media outlet how that works. You just cannot, if you have unfettered anonymous speech, the road to Nazism and very gross childish sexual innuendo is a very short path. And so the CEO sent out a tweet today that said, for the people complaining on Twitter, I do want to be clear, you can't, here it is. You please pay heed. That does sound like a phrase by somebody who would name their company Parler.
Parler, yeah.
I think we're right.
To be follow.
He said, please pay heed. Here are a few basic rules. Your username cannot be obscene like cum dumpster.
Oh God.
So the N-word
N-word
is okay, but cum dumpster is against the rules of Parler.
Can I just point out that as an example,
as with his lead example.
Right, exactly. It's not like on a list of examples. It's the only example.
Yeah.
I'm naming my account Ben Wittes.
Thank you, Kate.
Ben Wittes CD.
You're not going to name it cum dumpster?
I know, right? I've had my opportunity has come and gone.
We will not allow you to. We will not allow you to spam other people trying to speak with unrelated comments like "F you," "It's stupid," "It's pointless," "Grow up." Well, your sir is the sir. He is in for a long life on Parler if he's worried about his users growing up. You cannot threaten to kill anyone. Sorry, that's not going to be okay. I mean, this this experiment
We're on the
in
slippery
unfettered-
slope, man.
I mean,
Once you say you're not allowed to threaten to kill anyone and no cum dumpster, and you are sliding, the next thing you know, you are discriminating against conservatives.
It is true.
Oh my God,
and
guys.
Josh Hawley will be calling a hearing, and he'll have Diamond and Silk there, and they'll be expressing
Oh my
how now Parler is in the pocket of the tech oligarchs.
Guys,
that are
look,
trying
my
to silence
username's
us.
already taken.
Oh.
Did you, Kate? That's terrible.
I know. I just was curious. I was actually curious if it would be taken or not.
See what happens if you try to use cum dumpster.
No, I don't even want to type that, Ben. It's a little gross.
Sorry. It's an official example.
It
The
is.
CEO of the
I know.
site.
I don't know. I could think of a lot of terrible things, but I'm not going to type them. But I can't it's actually surprising to me that I wonder if it's actually taken or if that's just like something they say is taken to make it so that no one can be that name.
Maybe we should set up an in lieu of fun page so that we can tweet out where we're going to be and all these fine people can join our show.
Oh, great. Ben.
As someone who spent a lot of time on conservative chat boards in my day, this is a creative bunch. They will work their way around. If they want to have a username that is in the genre of cum dumpster, they will definitely find alternate characters to use in order to get that across. I mean, these are the people that turn the frog into a symbol of Nazism.
Right, against the will of the creator of Poor Peppy the Frog.
Yeah, Tim, have you ever read my friend Andrew Marantz's book about kind of the rise of he's a writer for the New Yorker. Oh, it's called Antisocial.
I only read coming of age fiction and long form magazines. I'm sorry. And I feel like any modern book on politics, including future books that I write, so people can hold this against me, are always better as a magazine article, in my opinion. But I may have read his New Yorker work.
Yeah, he wrote a great piece about Reddit that was in the New Yorker about like kind of a really. Do you? Yeah, he wrote a great piece that was just kind of like about Reddit and how they did I think it was one pixel at a time. I forget what it's called. It was like The Place. And anyways, it was about how all these Nazi things came and disappeared. Anyways, he's written a lot. We should have him on the show, Ben. He would be great. He would actually he and Tim, you guys would hit it off. He spent a long time getting close to some of the worst people on the internet and doing things I would not have wanted to do.
God bless him.
Why do you spend so much time in conservative? I mean, I know that you identify as conservative or
identify.
I used to
be an oppo man, and I've got some regrets about those days, but I used to do, Republican opposition research. I had the biggest firm, and so I had to be familiar with, all the dregs of conservative media that have since come to ruin our culture. I'm trying to avenge now in my middle age. So I was familiar with all these guys from that. And then, as this kind of spiraled out of control on me, really during Jeb, when I kind of realized how dangerous this monster was, after that, I've just spent a lot of time reading and writing about it. I find it interesting. I think that there was that huge I had a blind spot. I was involved in this world. I had a blind spot to just how pervasive it was. I think that there's a sense to dismiss it as it's just bots, or these aren't real these aren't real people, and these are just a couple of bad apples that are creating a bunch of fake accounts, and the Russians, and there are bad apples creating a bunch of fake accounts, and there are Russians, but there are also a disturbing amount of real people who are participating in these things, and they have a very nefarious effect. And so it will continue, and I think people underestimate the extent that it will continue to play a role in the party, even if Trump is defeated handily.
I mean, at the very least, go ahead, Ben.
No, go ahead. I was going to
wrote
change
it.
the subject, but if we're not done with this subject yet, let's
Yeah, just really quickly, a
let's finish
story
it.
that I think is exactly on topic, which is that like I wrote an article about online shaming a number of years, like a law review article. And one of the stories that I told that was about actually real world / online shaming in the early days of, oh my God, what was that message board that everyone used to use that was like in communities? I forget, like it wasn't Usenet, it was something else. But anyways, basically a small town in Georgia, like somebody went on and started defaming this hairdresser and said that he killed his wife, said that he like molested his kids, said he did all this stuff. The entire town believes it. The entire town shames him. They're like, come and like do this stuff on his, like, trash his house, slash his tires, like everything. He's run out of town, literally run out of town. Can't figure out who's doing this. It's coming from like 35 different people all saying all this stuff on this message board. I can't believe I can't remember the name of it. It's driving me crazy. But anyways, runs to town, on his way out of town, stops by a lawyer's office and is like, do I have any claim? And in that day, like they wouldn't de-anonymize people. They de-anonymize the people that are on the website that have been saying all this stuff. It is one woman, 35 different names. Literally, he's never met her in his life, never had like one interaction with her. Apparently, while he was working a part-time job at a department store, she was unhappy with how he was looking at another woman while he was like wrapping up her bag, and decided that he was a pervert and decided to like ruin his life. And it's just like that one moment, like I feel like people have no idea how incredibly pervasive and how quickly from online to real world, depending on the size of your community, this can completely destroy you and wipe out your life, and how it just takes one person with anonymous speech looking like 35.
Just really quick on this, because this is like a rant of mine. The anonymity is the problem. Like there are a lot of really smart people who have, who are much more versed in me in tech policy, who have deep thoughts on different rules and different things that Facebook and Twitter and all these things can do to make things better. But all of the changes that have been made since 2016 would pale in comparison to these platforms just making people be real. And I understand that there are complaints about that. There are concerns. Some people want to be anonymous and speak politically, but they can't do it because of their jobs. And I get you have to balance those things. But anonymity is by far the biggest problem across all of these platforms. And all of the Russia shit would have been totally resolved and would have been totally minimized in 2016 if the platforms would have just made people be real. And all these other like changes around the edges that Hawley and Cruz and some of the lefty populists support, some of them are good, some of them are bad, but none of them would make nearly as big of a difference as that.
So I totally agree with that, and I made this point in a very mild way on Twitter the other day that said, basically, if you're tweeting anonymously, ask yourself why. Some people have legitimate reasons, but a lot of people just don't want to be accountable for what they say. Right. And that's not a good reason. And
I bet that was very well received.
Yeah, there are a lot of tweets at me about the voice of privilege and all that. And a lot of them are from anonymous accounts. And look, I accept that, if you want to be a racist in public, that's actually kind of hard to attach your name to in our society, unless it's getting easier. But it's still a little bit socially difficult. And if you can do it from behind a mask, that's an attractive option. And I just think a lot of people are really into a whole bunch of people tweeted at me that a good reason was at-will employment, to which my response is, are you saying stuff that's going to threaten your job? Like, what is it that you're saying that's going to threaten your job? And I accept that for some people, the answer is they're saying things that are so offensive that they're going to threaten their employment. To which my question is, why are you saying those things? Now, granted, there are people who are saying things that are really courageous and ahead of their time, and we all really need to hear them. But McDonald's is not going to like it if they're saying the thing. There just aren't that many of those people. The much more common problem is that people are saying things that McDonald's actually has a pretty good reason not to want people saying. And let's talk about the campaign.
I'd love to.
We now have two more major polls that show the president in a very deep hole. You have been at the RNC and associated with real campaigns, real presidential campaigns, the Jeb Bush campaign, etc. How panicked would you be if you were associated with the Trump campaign rather than wearing that Joe Biden shirt?
Yeah, quick plug and disclaimer. I'm working with your friend Sarah Longwell and Bill Kristol on Republican Voters Against Trump right now.
And God bless you for it.
So I do have an interest in this, and you should go to rvat.org. We have all these weird and interesting and diverse, they're all Republicans and former Republicans, so only kind of diverse within the Republican coalition of what diversity means. But we have very interesting perspectives.
We have both kinds of music, country and Western.
Western, yeah, exactly. Country and Western. And it's really kind of, a lot of them are really moving, frankly, if people telling their own story. And we're doing ads with those. So anyway, with that out of the way, I encourage people to go. My political analysis hat. Shit is not good over there. And when things are going bad in a campaign, days feel very long. And tensions run really high. And you mentioned that I was on Jeb. The best day on that campaign was his announcement speech. He gave an awesome announcement speech. And the next day, Donald Trump gave his announcement speech, and everything went downhill from there. And I got to tell you, I had another boss I worked on a losing campaign on, and he was, we were up against the wall, and it was a bad cycle for Republicans, and I was driving around with them, and I said, oh, well, there's only 6 weeks left. We can just run through the tape. And he was like, you don't realize how long 6 weeks can be until you live them 1 second at a time. And Brad Parscale is living his days 1 second at a time right now. And there are a lot of people in presidential campaigns giving them unsolicited advice they don't want. And they've got a candidate that doesn't listen to them. So they can't even really run a campaign because they don't have any control over their message, because anytime they want to talk about something, Trump can tweet about something else. So this doesn't mean that they can't dig out of the hole. This doesn't mean that Trump can't win, but they're not having very much fun over there.
And when you say, like, one of the responses that everyone gets when they point out how bad this situation is, yeah, but that's what people said in 2016 about the Hillary Trump race. How different is this from that?
It's different. I was one of those people, so I was totally wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things in my life, but I was never more wrong about anything than 2016. I thought Hillary had it in the bag. So, everybody can take this.
I don't really think you should beat yourself up for that. There were many people who thought that. Yeah. I say that with, like, I don't know. I still remember looking at the Virginia returns and just like being like, holy shit, what's going on?
It was Florida for me, but yeah, look, that said, just because you're wrong once doesn't mean like the laws of gravity don't exist anymore, right? There's still certain political dynamics that are at play here, and Hillary never had a lead as big as Biden does now. Hillary never had as good of an electoral map as Biden does now. Arizona Biden's winning Arizona, and it was never really on the map for Hillary. So Biden has more paths to victory than she did. And frankly, Biden's brand positioning is just a million times better than hers. And part of that was her fault.
How do you mean that? Because people are not passionate about Joe Biden.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
And Hillary had a lot of people who were passionately pro her, as well as people who were passionately against her. In what sense is Biden's brand positioning better than Hillary's?
Sure. the people that were passionate for Hillary were already going to vote, and they lived in the wrong places. The types of voters that matter are the blue collar white guys that left Obama for Trump. They are the suburban, college educated swing voters, soft Republicans or moderate swing voters, who were, you know, the security moms for Bush and then went for Obama and have gone back and forth. Those voters matter. Hillary was pretty good with that category, not perfect, but pretty good. And then the lower engagement voters, you know, a lot of times younger voters and voters of color, who didn't turn out in as much numbers as the Democrats needed. Biden's in a better place than her with all of those people. I mean, he is not seen as dangerous among the Obama-Trump working class voter types as Hillary was. That's probably unfair. It was probably sexism. It was probably people like me spreading BS about her for a decade and 2 decades. But and it was also a little bit her fault because, you know, she was under FBI investigation and you know, decided that her and Bill, you know, needed to go make a lot of money in between their time in public service. So, you know, there are plenty of blame to go around, but she was demonized among this group. Among the suburban soft Republican types that we're working to get to vote for Biden now, we hear time and time again from people how much they hated Hillary, how much it was beaten into them from Fox, how they never could have voted for her. You know, Biden just doesn't have that kind of enmity against him. And Biden demonstrated his strength with black voters in the primary. And I think that despite the fact that he's not, you know, again, it wasn't the choice, you know, the candidate of choice among the younger demographic. The 4 years of actually Trump as president has created an environment that is going to massively surge turnout against him to the point that Biden doesn't have to do a whole lot. So, you know, across all the key demographic groups, Biden's in better shape than Hillary. Now, the only thing working against him is that just as much as Trump has radicalized people against him, he's also radicalized people for him. And I was talking to a Republican consultant yesterday who said that Trump's getting, you know, Saddam Hussein-like numbers in the rural parts of some of these states. And there are a lot of blue-collar white dudes. There are more blue-collar white dudes that don't have a college degree than any other demographic in the country. And a big surge in turnout of them could offset some of this. But you know, those are kind of the key demos to look at. And Biden's in better shape across all of them.
To what extent do you think the polls are, the New York Times ran a long methodology discussion about how it was trying to correct for a bunch of this. To what extent do you think the polls are anticipating some of that surge in enthusiasm on the Trump blue collar side, and to what extent may they still be missing the degree of it?
I think some of them are missing it. I mean, you see some outlier polls that just way oversample college educated voters. And that is the biggest gap in the electorate, is college versus non-college. And so, you know, I think that there probably is, you know, there are definitely polls out there that are missing it. I think that Cohn at the Times really gets it. And you can see the movement in his numbers. I mean, this is not just a random outlier poll. He did a poll in the fall that had Biden beating Trump very, very narrowly, thanks mostly to the human scum. You're welcome. He was just doing better than all the other Democrats among my people, the moderate Republican types. Bernie and Warren were losing just slightly to Trump in that poll. I think it was late October, November. Same states this time, Biden is now up handily in those Times polls. So, you know, Nate knows what he's doing. His methodology is sound, and that movement is real. So I think that, yeah, some of these polls could be oversampling college educated voters, but that doesn't mean that the movement isn't real.
All right. Jennifer Watson, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. One of the things that I keep wondering is every time I see a poll where Biden is under 50% in the state, I really wonder if that means it's tied, because I'm not sure that everybody who's going to vote for Trump will say so.
The shy Tory. The
shy Tory effect. Is it real?
Yeah,
Everybody
it's a little bit real.
Who's not saying they're voting for Biden actually voting for Trump?
No. It is a little bit real. There are some shy Trumpers out there. The thing to be worried about is less about that than about the break at the end. Now, I will never forget, in the Monday before the election, I had a Republican pollster. I bumped into him at this thing back when I lived in DC and had to see all these losers all the time. And he said to me, Tim, man, like all my polls show Trump breaking huge over the weekend. And he said it's all these voters that don't like either candidate. They're just breaking strong to Trump. And that was real. That happened. And there was a big demographic of voters that didn't like either candidate. And Trump crushed Hillary by like 40 points among those voters. And they decided really late. So, if Biden's not below 50, that could be a sign of some of that. And that's something to watch, late voting for Trump. But the other thing is people tend to break with momentum. I mean, I think it's just as likely that all those people break to Trump as it is that all those people break away from him when they're, especially if the environment's anything like it is right now in November.
Don't late breaking voters historically break against the incumbent by like 2/3 or something?
Yeah, I mean, yes, they've tended to, but lately in our politics, they've kind of all broken one way. And some of the times, a lot of the times lately, that has been against the incumbent party more than the incumbent, right? So like in the midterms, for example, in the last 5 midterms, the out party has broken late to them. So it's a little bit different than that. That was not the case, for example, for Obama against Romney in 12. I think that there was a lot of hope that was going to happen. People are going to break to Romney in 12 among the Romney camp, and it just didn't materialize.
Daniel Alden, or Alden Daniel. I'm not sure which is the first name and which is the last. I am sure that you're muted, however. So unmute yourself and tell us which is your first name.
Alden's the first name. So
that was not what I was expecting.
Nobody ever does. Tim, so just a question about the effect of the coronavirus on campaign events. I think obviously that's going to change a lot of what happens over the next couple of months. I think one of the first things to go may be the debates. I see a lot of people saying, kind of talking about waiting for the debates to happen, but frankly, I'm not sure why either campaign would. I mean, Biden seems to be doing pretty well just staying in his basement, and Trump is the campaign has built this like idea that Biden is in cognitive decline up so much that like kind of the floor for Biden is, that like Biden could do really well just by kind of showing up and having a pretty mediocre debate.
Yeah, what do you think? I know you and I are fans of the basement,
Yes.
I forget, I think it was McKinley had the front porch campaign. Biden has the basement campaign.
Big fan.
George Conway recently, what did he say? Like more people would vote for a rotten tuna fish sandwich than Donald Trump.
I think there's a lot to the basement campaign. But I do think there are certain points you've got to neutralize. And one of them is the cognitive decline point. Although every time Trump speaks, it belies the idea that Biden is the one with cognitive decline issues. So if you're advising Biden, how do you address the sense that he is relentlessly inarticulate? He is a good person in this people like him kind of way. He's got the he empathizes with people empathize with him thing going. But there is this persistent sense, including among people who like him, that he's past his prime, he's not all there. What do you do about it if you're the Biden campaign?
I think that just like his brand positioning is good, I think currently his cognitive positioning is really good. I mean, the bar couldn't be any lower for him in debates against Trump. The Bernie bros tried this in the very last debate against Biden, and it totally backfired against them because Biden was completely coherent and fine in his debate with Bernie, and they were acting as if he was going to be drooling on himself on stage. And so I think the expectations game is good for him on this. I'd be putting him in stage situations where he can emphasize the empathy, emphasize the fact that he actually cares about other people and Donald Trump only cares about himself. I think that there was a great split screen of him in Wilmington during the protests, when he was meeting with the kind of Black community leaders at the church and meeting with protesters. There's kind of an image of him versus the image of angry Trump in the bunker. The more that he can do of that, I think throughout the fall, the better. But unless something changes, he should feel no pressure to put himself in uncomfortable situations or force big events during a virus. And frankly, I take the opposite view of some of the consultants of his. I would be doing fewer interviews. There's this bedwetting among Democratic consultants that he should be doing more interviews. I'm just like, what is he gaining by doing an interview on MSNBC? No offense to the people on MSNBC, but like the choir's already there for him. All he can do is screw up. He went to do that Charlemagne the God interview where he kind of said that weird thing about if you're not for me, you're not Black or whatever. It's just like, that was the only thing people remembered for the interview. What did he gain out of doing that? So I think he's got to pick and choose his spots, and I think we'll be fine for the debates.
That reminds me of the Howard Dean campaign, which was kind of just like this incredible, which was this kind of, I thought, like at the time, like an incredible kind of, as they were calling it back then, Netroots campaign of like college kids and everything else. And then like the only thing the man is remembered for is that weird yell that he gave and the woo or whatever. And like, nope, that's it. That's your legacy, dude.
I love that moment with all my heart.
Do you? Oh God,
I do. I think it's one of those great American. I mean, his campaign he had already lost, and so we remembered that as the end of the Dean campaign. But it was really a nail in a coffin that had already been built, and the body had been packed in. But I do think it's a wonderful moment of Americana. And I actually like Howard Dean. I think he's a very smart and able guy. And I do think it's kind of sad that that's what his campaign is remembered for, because I think it was a very innovative and interesting campaign. But every time I see that moment, I belly laugh. And I do love that moment.
The only thing I know about Mitt Romney is he tied his dog to the hood the roof of his car. So that's, that's me.
All this stuff feels so weird now. It's like,
doesn't it seem like you wish you could go back to that?
He was so unpresidential because he did a excited scream one time.
And Mitt Romney,
now we've got somebody firing off white power tweets, and it's like, oh well, great, hell of a job.
We have a great question from Tony
Awesome.
Kava, who's lovely. But I first want to ask before we go to Tony, I think we haven't talked since this happened, but what did you think of the Lincoln Project and the kind of the whole ramp debacle, and like they're using an ad in that? Did you think it was good? Did you think it undermined was undermined their kind of moral high ground? What did you take? Maybe the Lincoln Project doesn't want to have a moral high ground.
Yeah, I don't think they need to have a moral high ground. I'm with them on like 95% of what they're doing. Every once in a while they do one, and like, I do think that, I'm trying to remember which one, but the ramp thing worked. It worked.
Really?
Trump spent.
I haven't
20
seen
minutes.
the numbers.
Trump spent 20 minutes talking about the ramp and walking down the ramp and how he almost slipped, and his whole Tulsa speech was about the ramp. It was insane. And so obviously the Lincoln Project guys deserve major credit for that. I know there are other people doing it, but they were really driving it. And this stuff gets in his head, and they're playing mind games with him that are really effective. And none of them are running for office. I worry a little bit. I have like a small nagging worry about people that oppose Trump need to have respect for the humanity of everybody's humanity. And so I do worry if it's going after Trump supporters, that sometimes I get a little crossways with Rick on that, and we agree to disagree on strategic approach there. But being nasty to Trump, like who deserves it more than him? Nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have to play dirty with him because he does, and it's the only option. And those guys, I think also the fact that they're Republicans helps keep Biden clean on it. So A, Biden wouldn't be good at doing it. B, I do think it would cost Biden some moral high ground, and so I think that they're perfect for doing it.
Yeah.
Tony Kava.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Hello.
You weren't finished, Kate.
No. I was just going to say, like, in the future, are we going to have a third party all the time in there doing, I mean, maybe we have had it in there for a long time doing the dirty work. Yes, exactly. Right. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, not a problem at all. That's actually a more interesting question than mine. No, great show, by the way, you guys. And I agree totally about taking Trump on. He actually feeds on people being the adult in the room. Other people being the adult in the room, I should say. So 2 quick questions. One, who would you want to see as Biden's VP candidate? And second, what would Biden need to do after he wins, hopefully, to keep you on board after he won?
Ooh, that second one is a really interesting question. But let's deal with the first one, because it's a limited denominator of possibilities here at this point.
I don't
who
care
do you
who
like?
He picks. I have a personal preference for Tammy Duckworth, mostly because of her heroism, and I think that just as a strategic matter, this is where I don't think that Donald Trump could help himself but not make fun of her. And I think that would go very poorly for him. And so I think that it would just be the epic troll pick for VP. Also, she's qualified in addition to having a troll bonus.
What do you think he would nickname her? What do you think his nickname would be for Tammy Duckworth?
I'm not going to speculate, but I don't think it would be good.
Yeah, no, it would be awful.
It would belong on Parler.
Yeah, it would be on Parler.
Exactly.
So I think she'd be a great pick. And then my other comment is I have some of your progressive viewers are going to roll their eyes at this, but I have the tiniest concern about Warren. It's not a personal thing. I wouldn't change my vote in any way or my passion for Biden in any way. But I just think that the group that she excites is already for him. I don't think that she adds anything. I think that she could potentially move some people that are making the switch to Biden from being third party or from being Trump last time. And some of those people might take a second look because her brand is not great among key demos. Again, maybe sexism in certain cases, maybe deserved in certain cases, but
well, she's also an ideological figure. I mean, if you're a moderate, she doesn't. There's not a lot for you there. So
anybody else is fine for me. I also probably wouldn't pick somebody like Stacey Abrams. Again, nothing against her, but Biden should pick somebody that I just think there needs to be an experience bar that you cross. So
what about
Harris,
Susan Rice?
Demings, Rice.
I look at Susan Rice and I say, if you are Joe Biden, here is an African-American woman who has been national security advisor, who has an incredible foreign policy and national security background. There's no plausible argument that she isn't qualified. She's very smart. She's tough as nails and has been through the whole Benghazi thing. So everything that everybody yells about her is old news.
Mm-hmm.
What is the downside of Susan Rice?
I don't really see one. I mean, I could see arguments that Republicans would make against her, but I don't think any of them are going to stick. She's been through the ringer as far as national media. I do worry about pulling out somebody who's never done a lot of national media, but boy, she's had to do that. So I don't see one. I think Biden should pick somebody he's comfortable having there as VP, and if she trusts her, I don't think that she's that much of a political risk, frankly. I do think this is all a little bit of a parlay game because it's almost certainly going to be Kamala Harris. She just is the obvious choice. And so, we're all doing all the fantasy thing, but Harris seems to be the almost certain choice to me.
I guess I'm like really, I trust you guys. You have much more political instinct than I do. Ben has a bajillion times more political instinct than I do. Marty Lederman does. And everyone, when I said Stacey Abrams, has been like, no. And I'm like, really? I liked Stacey Abrams a lot. I thought that there was like kind of like this authenticity to her that reminded me of a young Obama, that reminded me of kind of the energy I felt around Howard Dean, that reminded me a little bit of like that. And maybe I'm totally off, but like, I just kind of had, I don't know, I don't get that with Kamala Harris, like, and I don't get that with Susan Rice at all. So that's just kind of
I agree with that. It's a risk reward thing. It's like, I totally agree that there's upside to Abrams, but it's kind of like, why? He's winning by 10 points. Downside, you want to have a Sarah Palin moment. I mean, not obviously she was not like Sarah Palin in a lot of ways, but just from an experience standpoint, I mean, she was a state rep. Like that's it.
No, you're right.
And also,
no, you're totally
also
right.
Quite apart from the impact on the election, if you're Biden and you're responsible and you're pushing 80, what is he, 77, 78 now? And you say, I could drop dead anytime. He's had a cerebral hemorrhage. He is not, like, he's not someone whom the actuarial tables favor.
Right.
And so you want somebody who, the day that you have your next cerebral hemorrhage and you are in a coma, is actually in a position to be president. And Stacey Abrams has been the minority leader of a state house. And she is an incredibly impressive woman. And, but her involvement in national political affairs is really like not substantial at this point. And I do think there's a major difference between, she has no executive experience. There's a major difference. I'm not the biggest Kamala Harris fan in the world. In fact, I'm not a Kamala Harris fan, but she's been the Attorney General of the state of California. That's a real executive job. She's been a United States Senator, and I do think there's a difference between the people who have done things like that. Now, I think Susan Rice is in a still different experience category because she's actually dealt with national security crises, which is something that a president has to do. But I do think there's a difference between the Kamala Harrises and the even Elizabeth Warrens who have theorized executive agencies but have never run them. And I think there's a real difference between people with federal experience and people like Stacey Abrams, who she's grotesquely talented, but she's not. But like, now look, there are people like Barack Obama who make that leap and do it successfully, but they're relatively few and far between. And I
just
I
to
think
like, yeah. So sorry, go ahead. I thought that was going to be what you left. Sorry.
No. It's basically.
I was going to completely. I know. Bam. We're going to like.
Stacey Abrams.
No, I feel like this is so easy to Monday morning quarterback because Sarah Palin, like, listen, she was in an executive position. She hadn't finished her first term, but she had been in Alaskan politics for a long time. If you see her in Alaskan politics debates, and I watched all of that freaking tape, she was completely in charge and commanding in the debates. She used to be like a newscaster for the local like Alaska like Anchorage junket. So that was like something that she was very good at speaking. There was no way to know that she would implode as much as she did. And she did well in her first big debut. Like, I think everyone was pretty worried on the day that she was named. I just wanted to kind of like put that out there from like a perspective. But go ahead, Tim.
I do agree with that, but there is some residual history on Palin. On the second part of the question, what does Biden have to do to keep me? I want to say a couple of things on that. One, this is something that a lot of my anti-Trump Republican friends and some of the far left people that don't like us never Trumpers being involved don't really appreciate. And so I just want to say this explicitly. I'm not involved in helping defeat Donald Trump because I want to be Joe Biden's communications director or be involved with Joe Biden or move back to DC and be a lobbyist and have Democrats feel like they owe me a favor. The only reason that I'm doing this is because Donald Trump is despicable. He disgusts me. He makes me less proud of my country, and I would do absolutely anything to get rid of him for nothing. And so,
Besides,
anyway,
man, you have found your calling.
Thank you.
You are an essayist. You are like going to be the Chris Hitchens of your time.
maybe. So
He
I'm
has
gonna write
better
more.
hair than Chris Hitchens.
True.
I don't know.
And so-
Chris looked awesome.
It's
So-
a little greasy and a little
He did have
disheveled
fun
all
hair.
the time.
But after this is over, here's what I would say. I think my people are free agents. I think some of my people will go back to the Republicans. Some of my people will be Democrats. Some of my people will be free agents. I am going to, write some very fun, interesting essays and like take a break and drink daiquiris. And, if Joe Biden doesn't go completely nuts between then and 2024, I might be with him again. Or maybe, who knows? I think that our politics is in a moment of transition. So I think it's hard to predict where we land. But I do have a sense for where my former party is going. And I think it is towards a sort of moderated Trumpism. Is not something that I'm going to be able to abide. So, as long as you all don't go nuts, I think I'm around. You can keep me.
I make no promises.
Don't go
I make
nuts,
no
though.
promises.
I warn you. I'm warning you. Don't go nuts. Because I will write mean essays about you when this is over. I will do it. I'm not afraid. I don't only write mean essays about Trumpers.
I have never been a Democrat in any meaningful sense. I've been forced.
I meant the listeners. You the Zoomers.
All right.
And just really quick on my essay writing, I do think you'll enjoy because it just landed right before I went off. Stuart Stevens, have you ever had him on In Lieu of Show? We
have not had Stuart Stevens on In Lieu of Fun.
He's such a character. So he wrote for the Bulwark about about the Confederacy. You must read that. He also wrote a book about the Republican Party's racist past, and some ass clown at the National Review who I've worked with wrote a review of his book that was supposed to be this epic takedown of Stuart Stevens and everybody at the National Review. Rich Lowry said it was the most devastating takedown ever. So I did a very inside baseball navel gazy thing that maybe only Ben Wittes will like, but I wrote a takedown of the takedown. I wrote a takedown of the takedown.
I'm excited
Stevens'
about
book. So please check that out. Sorry,
I
Kevin.
will check it out. So we got time for 2 more questions. We're going to do them back to back, and then Tim, you can wrap up.
All right.
Kevin Donahue, unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Hey, Tim, based on your experience working for Jeb and dealing with the freak show of the Trump campaign, how do you evaluate the Biden staffers in terms of their ability to handle the freak show?
All right, the Biden staff assessment. Brandon Music, awesome name. I don't suspect it's real, but we forgive you for that. You got to unmute yourself. And if your name is real, you got to admit it because that's an awesome name.
It is 100% real. It is what I practice under, what I was God-given when my mama gave birth to me.
No way. I've seen you on Twitter. I thought that was I always thought that was a Twitter pseudonym.
No, it's 100% real. It's
I love that.
Yes, thank you.
All right, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. My question was for Tim. He had mentioned the Lincoln Project a bit earlier. My question was, are you all going after the same set of voters, or you have different goals? Because I see a different kind of philosophy there, but I follow both of you pseudo-religiously, so I wanted to hear your thoughts on the difference between you two.
Thank you, Brandon. I'll take that one first.
Brandon, will you start a podcast? I love your voice so much.
Yeah, you got an awesome voice. You've got an awesome name. Brandon Music.
Brandon, even though you're not a Republican voter against Trump, I feel like we'll make an exception for you and put your video up on our page just so we can hear the Southern dulcet tones. On the Lincoln Project question, I think we are going after mostly, but not all, the same voters. We're super complementary in my view, with a complementary with an E, but also with an I. I talk to Weaver all the time and some of these other guys. Their strategy is national narrative making, getting in Trump's head, changing the environment and the conversation around the campaign. They've done a great job with that. They also are going after Senate candidates. We're not doing that for a reason I'll get to. And so I think that their audience is soft Republicans, super soft Republicans, independents, and kind of motivating, Democrats. That's all great. What we are also trying to target soft Republicans and swing voters, but we're also trying to reach these people that really are Republicans. Like they're like Republican, and they might be turned off by some of the Lincoln Project's ads, and they might vote for Tom Tillis in North Carolina. And we're trying to convince them to say, for one time in their life, don't vote for the Republican, join us, vote for Joe Biden, throw your vote away if you have to. But this guy is just, is just not doing the job. He's not capable of doing the job, and he's hurting the party and he's hurting the country. And so that is our strategy. And we feel like that's an added slice of the electorate that we're trying to reach. And the only way to do that, based on research, is for them to hear from people they trust, people like them, not from like rhinos like me and John Weaver lecturing to them. And so that is, I think, where our efforts are complementary. As for the Biden staff, I love Andrew Bates. He's a good pal. He's doing a great job with rapid response. I think that that their task is different than what our task was in the primary with Jeb. So I don't really think it's comparable. I think that their main task to deal with the Trump freak show is to get Biden ready for these debates. And I think if they do that well, whether they're good at fighting with Trump people on Twitter, isn't really that important. It's another reason it's nice to have us, Rhino, Never Trumper, Lincoln Project, RVAC guys out there, because we can do a lot of that. They got to focus on getting Biden ready for the debate and having a consistent message that's consistent with Biden's existing brand, which is good and which is working. And it doesn't do them any good, or it doesn't really matter if they get it down into the mud with Trump, though some of them are certainly capable of doing that. So that's my assessment of those guys. I think they're doing an amazing job, and so they should be getting more credit.
On that note, we have reached the end of another hour.
And I finished my daiquiri.
I want that daiquiri. I want your wallpaper.
Gone. I reproduced the wallpaper in real life.
It's beautiful.
I would settle for the bamboo studio.
We have no idea who our guest is tomorrow. As
It
Tim
won't be
will
as
tell
good.
you, it won't be as good. I secured Tim's cooperation to appear here. What was it, like 3:30 or something?
Well, I'm a busy man, so let's not say
Yeah.
that. I snuck you guys in.
You fit us in. We appreciate it.
You really do.
It's always
Thank
fun.
you for joining us. We will be back tomorrow, 22 hours, 57 minutes from now, unless we're late. And until then, Kate, what do we say?
We don't have fun anymore. So in lieu of fun, tweet us your best names for what our Parler Twitter or Parler username should be.
Indeed. We will see you tomorrow. Thanks, Tim.
Later.